Et donc la première rencontre, non, la deuxième rencontre, pardon, juste après les Inside the Doc, donc avec Nouveaux médias, Nouveaux diffuseurs, avec à la modération Pascal Lechevallier, à qui je vais laisser la parole. Et je viendrai juste embêter à 10 minutes pour les questions. À toi, Pascal.
Merci d'être si nombreux en ce début d'après-midi. Alors on continue notre cycle autour du documentaire des nouveaux médias qu'on a initié avec les chaînes françaises hier et aujourd'hui. Et j'ai le plaisir d'accueillir cet après-midi Kathryn Graham, qui représente la NZ Film Commission, qui est l'équivalent du CNC pour les francophones. À ses côtés, nous avons Lisa Taouma, qui est productrice pour Tiki Productions et qui est également une fidèle des différentes interventions qu'on fait depuis plusieurs années autour du documentaire. À ses côtés, Nevak de TVNZ, donc, qui vient de Nouvelle-Zélande, et puis Anusha Duray, que nous connaissons également très très bien, et qui vient de SBS en Australie. Et pour finir, à mes côtés, Luc de Saint-Sernin, qui représente le groupe France Télévisions sur la zone Pacifique. Alors le sujet d'aujourd'hui, comme on vient de le dire, ce sont les nouveaux médias, les nouveaux diffuseurs. Et l'idée, c'est de voir, en particulier donc en Australie et en Nouvelle-Zélande, quelles sont les initiatives qui sont menées à la fois par les chaînes, par les producteurs, pour accompagner le documentaire sur les nouveaux supports et de voir quels sont les publics qui sont touchés et comment vous articulez on va dire l'enchaînement entre la télévision classique, traditionnelle, et les nouveaux médias. Quand on parle de nouveaux médias, évidemment, on parle des plateformes. Et donc, les plateformes, tout le monde les connaît, c'est Disney+, Netflix, Amazon. Et de voir comment ça s'articule, parce qu'encore une fois, tout ce qui se passe dans la zone Pacifique n'est pas forcément bien identifié dans le reste du monde. Qui veut démarrer? Je vous laisse la parole, mesdames. Luc? Voilà, Luc veut démarrer.
Il en faut bien. Non, mais c'est pour lancer la conversation, en fait. Et pour vous dire que cette année, c'est une année un peu particulière, parce que pour la première fois, nous avons enlevé un peu de notre budget télé pour le consacrer à l'activité Internet, à la fois de la fiction et du webdoc. C'est une première. Pardon, c'est une première. Alors évidemment, c'est pas dans des proportions importantes, mais ça nous donne au moins un peu de mou pour pouvoir commencer à nous engager sur des opérations, à la fois des webfictions, à la fois des webdocs, et cette démarche-là, elle est voulue et décidée par l'ensemble de notre direction. Donc c'est un axe prioritaire. Donc je dis ça pour lancer l'affaire, c'est que désormais on a mis un peu d'argent dans ce genre de programme. On est d'accord sur le fait que tout ce qui passe en télé n'a pas forcément vocation à passer sur le web, mais que tout ce qui passe sur le web peut être pris sur la télévision. En tout cas, c'est la philosophie qu'on dépasse. Et puis que l'ensemble des programmes que nous faisons, on les fait circuler évidemment par définition partout. Donc ça a un gros impact sur nos téléspectateurs. Et puis les premières armes que nous faisons en fiction, ça, c'est important pour nous parce que ça nous permet de raconter nos vies, nos histoires, d'être en miroir avec nos réalités locales, le tout sur des arches narratives de fiction classique, mais qu'évidemment, on n'achète pas forcément au même prix, donc, parce qu'on n'est pas non plus richissime, mais on peut investir. Donc la décision de mettre un peu plus d'argent sur le web qu'auparavant, une décision réfléchie, l'envie d'avoir des programmes qui rassemblent un peu tout le monde et qui nous permettent, voilà, pardon, c'est ça que je oubliais, qui nous permettent de rajeunir notre auditoire, parce que notre public télé est assez âgé, alors que le public sur les webdocs ou les webfictions est un peu plus jeune, même nettement plus jeune. Et voilà. Et si vous avez le goût, là, en tout cas pour vous, mais pour vous aussi, mesdames, bien entendu, vous pouvez aller sur le site de France.tv, regarder la première web-série Made in Outre-mer, Made by l'Outre-mer, Made for l'Outre-mer, et qui s'appelle Ultra Loin, et qui raconte l'histoire d'une dizaine d'ultramarins qui vivent en colocation à Paris, avec tout ce que ça a de rigolo comme programme. Voilà.
Merci
lancé maintenant.
Merci Luc. Justement, je vais poser ma première question à Kathryn, parce qu'en France, vous le savez sans doute tous et toutes, la régulation est très importante. C'est-à-dire qu'en France, on a des textes de loi ou des accords interprofessionnels qui régissent justement la distribution des nouveaux médias. Est-ce que c'est le cas en Nouvelle-Zélande? Est-ce qu'il y a des accords particuliers, des textes particuliers lorsqu'on souhaite distribuer un programme sur les nouveaux médias, sur les plateformes?
Okay, so at the New Zealand... Oh, no problem. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. At the New Zealand Film Commission, we...
Turn it on.
Hello. Right. Kia ora. Kia ora. At the New Zealand Film Commission, we fund first and foremost for theatrical release. So our legislation, our statute says it must be released theatrically. So in terms of distribution, and you have to have, so we fund development, script development, and in terms of documentary, we fund documentary development, and usually up to 100,000 New Zealand dollars, and then for documentary. And then when you come in for production funding, you have to have a distributor. Normally, the distributor holds the rights for Australasia. Not always. It's up to you to decide what you want, where you want your film to go, and which audiences you think your film will resonate with. So, so first and foremost, it's for theatrical release, and then you have a distributor. That distributor will, negotiate with you as to what rights, what position you're going to take with your doco. And then after that, for the different territories around the world, internationally, you negotiate with whoever. You find a distributor and you negotiate your window with them. Because often our docos also have a broadcaster, and so it usually goes festival release, theatrical release in the domestic market, and then Australia, and then maybe, depending on the rights you've negotiated with your broadcaster, they might get it maybe 2 years later. It just depends, right?
6 months to 2 years.
Yeah, and then I guess all the documentary makers have got to be aware of what video rights you want to retain and where you want to exploit your content. So it's not legislated, but that's what we fund. Yeah.
Merci. Quel est le délai pour la salle? La fenêtre?
Well, that depends on your... if you have... We recently had a New Zealand... there's an American-made documentary about a volcanic eruption that happened recently at home, and Netflix, it was a Netflix commission. We'd put some development money into it, and I believe they didn't even release it. They had a small release locally in New Zealand, and Netflix allowed them to do that. But it was really, that's the thing, is you've got to be really aware of who you're giving away what to or selling what rights to, because some of them, like Netflix, allowed them to do small release in New Zealand, but globally they retained the rights. So they didn't actually, that won't go to festival, because many festivals don't take documentaries that have already played or been streamed somewhere else. So you just have to be really aware of what you're getting into with each deal that you make. Yeah. So there's no actual single answer, sorry.
Ok, très intéressant.
Well, it's exactly as Kat said. There's no blanket legislation. So as a producer, it's contractually individual. Every contract is negotiated differently. The rights are negotiated differently. Nevak deals with television and online as well. And so from a funder's perspective and from a network perspective, from a producer's perspective, it's just every contract is an individual negotiation. But like Kat said, you have to have a big distribution plan with which is the cleverest way to position your content. But we don't have a blanket legislation.
One thing that I think is really incredible as well, just to add to what Kath and Lisa have said, is we've got Chelsea Winstanley, who's a producer in Aotearoa, New Zealand, who's set up a Indigenous distribution company to sort of help Māori, Pacifica producers to be able to negotiate the best deals, because when you're coming into these, if you're a relatively new producer, there's so many loopholes and there's so many things that you've got to learn, and you might be the best creative, but knowing that business back end is something that you learn as you progress through your career. So having somebody who you can trust is really important too, to get good advice. I think the other thing as well is that, if you look at the media landscape over the last 5 years, the fragmentation of audiences is what has completely transformed the way in which we do our work. In the old days, you'd make content, it would go on a broadcaster, and that would kind of be it. Now, you have to think about a whole distribution plan, and I think it's really important to think about your audience first, and know that your audience doesn't live in one place the way that it used to when everybody just used to watch linear. So it's thinking about, how do I create content that is going to speak to a younger audience on social? How do I drive that audience to linear? How do I then ensure that they can watch that content on a digital platform? What am I doing in terms of, other territories as well? So it's just thinking a lot bigger, and it really has changed the playing field.
Alors j'ai une question dans le même ordre d'idée. Si je reprends l'exemple de la France, on a beaucoup de mal aujourd'hui à avoir des co-exploitations entre les plateformes et les chaînes, pour des raisons de fenêtres et des raisons de droit. Est-ce que vous, sur votre zone, Nouvelle-Zélande et Australie, vous arrivez à avoir des co-exploitations, une chaîne de thé et une plateforme?
Yeah, we've just started doing it in the last couple of years, and it's been very successful. We've partnered with Netflix now on quite a few documentaries and documentary series, and I think this landscape is changing so quickly and so fast. There's a lot of opportunity in that change. So in negotiating and brokering these deals, I sit in acquisitions. I don't commission, I'm acquisitions. It has changed so completely, and it's still changing, but it's hard to change your mindset. So exclusivity used to be the most important things in negotiating those windows, and everyone wanted exclusivity. What we're seeing happening very rapidly, very quickly, is that's not necessary because of the fragmentation of audiences. So you want, as filmmakers, you want as many people, and especially when it comes to documentary, because a lot of these times this is a really important storytelling that has a social impact. So you just want to reach as many audiences as possible. And I think the great thing about this new world is that hunger and need for exclusivity has we're seeing it drop completely, because it's just about what are the best ways that we can get the most audiences, and we know different ages, different income brackets watch things differently. So it's very interesting to watch the need for exclusivity wane away.
Merci. Alors, on a parlé des grandes plateformes, mais on échange régulièrement depuis plusieurs années ensemble, tous les ans, et on parle aussi des initiatives de plateformes locales sur les chaînes que vous exploitez. Donc aujourd'hui, quels sont les modes de distribution que vous privilégiez directement en dehors des accords avec les grandes plateformes internationales, YouTube, Facebook, ou des plateformes que vous avez vous-même initialisées en prolongement de vos chaînes?
What was the contracting and how? Is that what you mean?
A bit
Non,
confused
de création de plateforme, hein, pas forcément.
I don't know if it was lost in the translation, but so how important new platforms are, how easy it was to do?
Exactement.
Yeah. So, I mean, Luke touched on it a little bit in Anusha. So what we know about, because everything is driven by audience, and So what we know about the landscape of Polynesian audiences in Aotearoa, so the Palangi population, the Papa'a, the white population is a very aged population. It's aging very rapidly. And the Pacific population, Moana Nui a Kiwa, is the fastest growing youth population. So, for example, the Pacific population in Aotearoa, the median age is 23. Yeah. In Auckland, it's 15. Yeah, Māori and PI. So our audience is very, very, very young. So everything we do, everything we make is driven towards the demographic of the audience. So the viewing behavior, we all know the viewing behavior, the TikTok generation, you know, it's driven by a certain type of media. It's totally driven online. And also socials now. So interestingly, there's more and more content being funded to be played out natively on social media. So we have series that have been funded for TikTok, that Nevak's network has funded that. And so this is the new landscape, you know, so... and then we can read that engagement very quickly because the analytics are very clear. So this basically is the new world, and it doesn't translate just to children's content. You know, like we see platforms where news is being delivered natively on social media. So beyond... Even an online platform like the Coconut is quite old school now, you know, because everything is really being driven by immediacy and social media. So there's lots of scripted film content that's going straight. There's a wonderful Pacific series called I Got You, which is straight to social media. So that's the new online.
Et justement, quelles sont les grandes plateformes locales en Nouvelle-Zélande et en Australie qui justement permettent de distribuer tous vos contenus en dehors des Américains?
Sure.
I think certainly at TVNZ, one of the things that we've sort of looked at, it's like we've half jumped a ditch. So linear audiences is still holding up all of our advertising revenue, and it's still, you know, I mean, there's in New Zealand we have a population of 5 million people. 2 million people tune into a TVNZ platform every day. But the way in which they're, you know, that used to be all linear. Now we have to be all things to all people. So we've set up a rangatahi, like a youth news platform that has documentaries, we're doing some scripted content on there, news and current affairs, so that's all there for them. Then we've got TVNZ Plus, which is fully digital, and we are investing all of our money now in that digital platform instead of you know, being linear first. So that we're on the cusp of having to, you know, we kind of almost want to speed up jumping to the other side of the ditch, because digital is the future, and if we don't evolve, we'll be dinosaurs, and you know what happened to the dinosaurs.
I suppose the other thing too, and I guess for documentary makers, is the realisation that even though you want a festival and you want a cinematic audience, and of course at the Film Commission we want a cinematic audience as well, but during COVID, documentary viewing became a very television whatever platform, but a small screen experience, unfortunately. And so what we're finding is the challenges now is to get people back to the cinema to watch documentary, and we've had a few successes. We've had a few films that have done really well, but it's really challenging, you know, especially if you want festivals, because if you want festivals, you've got to have, you know, you've got to hold back your content from the other streamers and platforms. You've got to keep that goal firmly in your mind. Yeah, so it's really challenging. And I was talking to one of our local distributors, and they have a documentary platform that they do their deal and they stream on that. And they said, yeah, it's just really hard to get people to go back to the cinema for documentary. Not so much for films, you know, scripted films, but for documentary, for factual, it's a challenge. Yeah.
It's really interesting post-COVID with the whole cinematic release. So what we found now with coming back people coming back to cinemas is obviously they're not coming back the same they used to do, but documentary is actually doing really well for us in cinema. So the two things that are actually attracting big audience in cinema, you know, because there's kind of that overdose of Marvel and all of that that's really waning, but I find it really interesting is documentary is now pulling audiences and horror. So genre really, and so I find that it's really interesting, but you know, that's the other thing with this is audiences are changing so quickly. You know, we spend, you know, as a public broadcaster, we spend a lot of time and money, obviously, looking at our audiences, looking at how their appetite changes. We used to be able to project kind of, you know, what was happening 1, 2, 3 years in advance. Now we can't even work out what audiences and their appetites and the way they want to watch 6 months in advance. Like, you just, it's really incredible the way people are changing their habits.
I would say, though, that content is king. So provided you are thinking about whatever it is, whatever the story is that you're telling in your documentary, and you're thinking about it, because I fell into this trap as a producer early on, where I kind of, you know, there were some things that I realised resonated with a larger audience, and obviously for a network, that's what we're looking for. We do niche content as well. We call it niche, but for me, that doesn't make that content any less important. It's an important story to tell, but we know it's not going to attract the broader audience that we need, because we're commercial, like that. TVNZ is a commercial entity. That's how we exist, is, you know, through commercial dollars. So riding that line between the commerciality and the audience, as well as telling the stories that are important and that talk about the fabric of our society and make us who we are in Aotearoa, is so important. But I think as well, the other thing that's really incredibly important is networks, and working alongside the likes of Kath at the Film Commission or Tiki Lounge or producers, and they've got their own platform, and understanding that we can all, there's enough for everyone. It's just that because the audiences are all eating at different times and behaving differently, we just need to be able to share. So I think it's the collaboration piece is really, really important, and that's one thing I think that's been great out of the fragmentation of audience.
Je reviendrai sur ce point-là tout à l'heure. J'ai posé une question à Luc parce que aujourd'hui, on sait que France Télévisions, le siège est en métropole, et donc quelle est la marge de manœuvre locale pour justement travailler sur les nouveaux réseaux, sur Internet, avec des contenus locaux en Nouvelle-Calédonie ou en Polynésie française?
Je vais répondre à ta question. Juste, je reviens un tout petit peu en arrière sur la conversation qui avait lieu là tout à l'heure, parce que nous avons changé de doctrine en cours de route. Dans un premier temps, on se disait, nous fabriquons des contenus sur le web, et ces contenus, nous les exposons là où ça fait le plus d'audience. Par exemple, sur YouTube. Mais du coup, on a changé au bout de 2 ou 3 ans. Notre philosophie est désormais, on ne diffuse jamais nos programmes sur YouTube. Si vous voulez voir nos programmes, vous venez chez nous. Et vous venez que chez nous. Et seulement chez nous. Exceptionnellement, nous pouvons arriver à prendre un épisode d'une série qui fait 25 épisodes par exemple, le mettre sur YouTube juste pour appâter. Ça sert d'outil d'autopromotion, mais ça ne sert pas de contenu qu'on puisse visionner dans son intégralité. Ce changement, on est passé de l'hyperdistribution, où vraiment tout le monde était arrosé, on essayait de glaner ça, mais on n'avait pas le bénéfice des clics. Le bénéfice des clics, il allait sur YouTube. Donc ils avaient une audience avec nos programmes. La présidente est arrivée, elle a dit ça va pas, on ne peut pas continuer comme tel, et désormais nous sommes dans la philosophie inverse. Donc c'est intéressant d'avoir vécu ça, parce que ça nous permet d'avoir une approche extrêmement pragmatique. Nous maîtrisons nos audiences. On en fait peut-être un peu moins que si on filait sur YouTube, mais il n'y a pas de pub, puisqu'on est le service public, et en plus on maîtrise nos audiences de A à Z. Voilà, c'était juste pour compléter le propos. Alors quant à la question que tu m'as posée, si j'ai bonne mémoire, je peux te dire que, en fait, il y a une réalité géographique, il y a un centre et puis il y a des périphéries, mais la réalité c'est que nous on a l'habitude de se considérer tous de la même façon. Finalement il n'y a pas tant de distance que ça, puis avec Internet il n'y en a même plus du tout. Donc un contenu qui est fabriqué ici en Polynésie, s'il est intéressant, il n'y a pas de raison particulière qu'il ne circule pas. Il ne faut pas qu'il circule n'importe où, et d'ailleurs il ne pourrait pas circuler n'importe où. Si c'est un contenu d'information, il circule dans un journal télévisé. Si c'est un magazine, ça va dans la case magazine que nous offrons, parce qu'on a une interface qui nous permet de sélectionner les magazines, les documentaires, etc. Donc finalement quelque chose qui fait de l'audience à Fort-de-France peut très bien en faire aussi à Pointe-à-Pitre ou à Papeete. Ça n'a pas d'importance, il suffit juste de choisir et de suivre le cheminement qui permet d'avoir des contenus qui soient fabriqués partout et visibles partout. Parce que ça, c'est vraiment important pour nous, c'est qu'on puisse rayonner, pas par volonté hégémonique, mais parce qu'on veut faire profiter de nos contenus pour tout le monde, quoi.
Ok, merci. Merci Luc. Dans la révolution qu'on est en train de vivre, on a eu YouTube, ensuite on a les plateformes, donc on a fait de la TVOD, donc la VOD, Video On Demand à l'acte, puis la SVOD, Subscription, et puis aujourd'hui on voit encore de nouveaux modes de distribution arriver qui sont très très liés à des phénomènes de monétisation, en particulier la publicité. Et donc, si on suit ce qui se passe en ce moment aux États-Unis, il y a un nouveau phénomène qui sont les fast channels, c'est-à-dire des chaînes qui sont des chaînes de contenu, de documentaires que l'on met les uns derrière les autres sur une thématique et on met de la publicité comme une chaîne traditionnelle. Est-ce qu'en Nouvelle-Zélande et en Australie, vous vivez ce phénomène ou est-ce qu'il n'y a pas du tout de fast channel ?
I haven't heard the term fast channel, but absolutely. In terms of streamers, we have the international streamers coming. So it hasn't hit as yet, but we know it's coming very soon. So with your subscription, there will be different levels of subscription. So you can subscribe and you may pay $14 a month and you will get the ads. If you want to pay $35 a month, you won't get the ads. So that will be another game changer and it'll be really interesting to see how audiences react to that. We're definitely already feeling the hurt of, because of the movement of audiences, so our linear broadcast for across all of our TV stations, the investment, and we're also going through a financial crisis, and the first thing people do is they stop buying ad space, and we're feeling that much harder and much faster. We knew it was coming. We didn't know it would happen so quickly and so hurtfully.
Merci.
I think, again, with the jumping of the ditch analogy, we've really upweighted our investment in digital. So at the moment we know that's where that's the priority, is investing in our digital TVNZ Plus platform. So Fast Channels is all a part of that. There's a massive strategy that we're developing at the moment. We were meant to do a big merger that was off yesterday, so when I get back to New Zealand we'll work out how that's all going to sit. But the whole idea of the way in which people are consuming content is changing, and I think even we do lots of deals with Anusha over in Australia in terms of content sharing, in terms of as well, like I think about some of the shows. We do a series called Casketeers, for example, which is one that Kath commissioned when she was at TVNZ, and it's a show about basically it's just about some people who have a, what do you call it, in funeral home, is that what we call it here? A funeral parlour, and that's sold to 27 territories around Netflix. At the moment, TVNZ Plus, we've got bigger audience numbers than Netflix, but that's a very privileged position, and we know that we've got to do a shitload of work to ensure that we maintain those numbers.
Merci. Toujours dans le même ordre d'idée, pour les 2, 3, 4 prochaines années qui nous attendent, est-ce que vous pensez que le marché va continuer d'évoluer, en particulier avec les plateformes ? On sait qu'elles commencent à rencontrer des difficultés. Je parle des grandes plateformes internationales. Et dans ces conditions-là, est-ce que vous pensez que vous, localement, vous avez une chance supplémentaire de les dépasser encore plus et d'attirer encore plus de public sur vos propres plateformes ?
I think, again, it's driven by the demographic of the audience and also devices. Like the evolution of devices has also, the technology of and people watch things on their watch. So all those devices have also played a part in it. And I think that this, well, for me, because we deal specifically with a Pacific audience. Interesting what you were saying, Luke, about content sharing in the region, because that's one of our main models. So I suppose it's considered a niche audience, but it's a very popular audience because we are the only Pacific platform that operates like we do online. So we're lucky. So that's a very specific thing. But the specific audiences we're dealing with have specific viewing behaviours, and so in terms of predicting and changing to a market. We're working with very specific market and market need and market behavior, and that is it's absolutely digital, but it's a very rapidly changing type of digital. Social media, different screens, going from small to smaller to smaller, and licensing periods where you need to factor online as the primary platform, so that's the opposite of the filmic model, for example. In terms of what's happening with the big streamers and how, the problems that the big streamers are happening, it hasn't hit us yet because of the specificity of our audience and our market. Different maybe for TVNZ and the commercial platform, and maybe similar to Anusha's audience. Yeah.
On a parlé là récemment de l'échange de contenu, du partage de contenu. C'est un sujet qu'on a déjà évoqué dans les précédentes conférences, en particulier avec des contenus qui viennent de Polynésie française et de Nouvelle-Calédonie. Est-ce que vous avez avancé dans des partenariats pour faire encore plus de partage de contenu pour que justement les populations de Nouvelle-Zélande et d'Australie découvrent aussi la culture polynésienne et la culture calédonienne? Est-ce que vous avez des exemples? Est-ce que ça a avancé ou on en parle au FIFO puis en fait il ne se passe rien?
Well, the wonderful thing is that beyond our colonial boundaries of language and geography, that there's, the really good tikanga of the content has a fantastic pan-Pacific reach. And, we use the term moana nui a kiwat, all of the moana together. We've had a wonderful relationship, for example, with Luke and a show called Game of Bros, which was commissioned by Nevak for a long time ago, which is the gift that keeps giving. Because apparently everyone likes watching hot men with no clothes on. But that's an example of content that has been very popular regionally across the whole region. But that's just one example. There's so many, because we need to stop seeing the kaiviki view of the colonial world and go back to our old Pacific view of one Polynesia and the way that we can operate collectively, with the points of interest of we're so blessed and privileged that we have a huge catalogue of content, and this is what we're now looking regionally at a co-sharing model. We already have the model with Australia, with Canada, with other Indigenous networks, but this is the model that's of our heart because it's the people that we made this content for. But it's wonderful also having co-pros within the region, like we've had training models in Samoa, training models in the Cook Islands, and upskilling. So we work with local crews in Tahiti, so we have contribute to the economy of all these islands. We're filming here tomorrow, but also we have crews in Samoa, in Tonga, in the Cook Islands. So we create a canvas of conversations across. It's like we create the bones of a universe, and we can populate it with the voices of all the regions. So that's the intention, but those are very real markets as well.
Okay, Luc.
Pour dire que on se rapprochera jamais aussi facilement qu'avec Internet et avec les échanges de programmes. Et plus nous partageons, plus nous nous connaissons les uns les autres. Et ce que nous essayons de faire dans nos chaînes, pas spécialement à France Télévisions même, mais dans les 9 premières, c'est de trouver des programmes qui sont issus de la région dans laquelle nous nous trouvons. Quand tout à l'heure on parlait de voir si on ne peut pas acheter un match de rugby avec les Néo-Zélandais parce que c'est juste les meilleurs au monde, ça nous intéresse peut-être d'avoir la finale.
Ça se discute, paraît-il.
Oui, je sais. J'ai des informateurs. On a trouvé un mode. Finalement, je change, c'est plus moi qui paye, c'est lui. Bon. Donc cette façon de travailler, c'est-à-dire à rechercher des programmes qui nous concernent, c'est un vecteur très important. En fait, ça nous permet de nous rapprocher. Et jusqu'à présent, on avait des approvisionnements de programmes qui avaient tendance à venir majoritairement de la France ou de la métropole ou des marchés américains. Et petit à petit, j'ai envie de dire programme par programme, on construit une identité locale qui nous permettent d'avoir des chaînes concernantes. C'est vrai en télévision, ça l'est encore plus sur Internet. Et c'est clair que là, le partage, quand on arrivera à maîtriser. Mais je sais qu'il existe désormais des outils de traduction simultanée immédiate, là, avec le truc artificiel. plus comment on dit. Enfin bon, bref.
Oui, avec des traducteurs d'intelligence artificielle.
Intelligence artificielle, merci. Avec cet outil-là, on peut avoir des contenus qu'on peut partager rapidement, puisqu'il n'y a plus de barrière de la langue, qui est le véritable problème entre nous. C'est un problème de langue, c'est pas un problème de statut finalement. Parce que TVNZ, c'est une énorme chaîne par rapport à Polynésie Première, mais en même temps, on a quand même tout loisir de travailler ensemble et de faire des acquisitions croisées, quoi. On ne désespère pas de vendre à Lisa des programmes.
Kathryn, j'ai une question concernant le financement de toutes les séries, de tous les documentaires que vous faites. En France, on en a longuement parlé ce matin, il y a un système très robuste d'aides qui sont à la fois des aides directes, des aides sélectives sur dossier. Est-ce que en Nouvelle-Zélande et en Australie, il y a des systèmes d'aide pour les tout petits producteurs qui veulent démarrer et qui n'ont pas les moyens de pouvoir financer avec des acteurs privés?
So the Film Commission is funded through, it has government money and it also has lottery money, which is our, lottery,
lottery.
And we're probably, in terms of the other funding agencies, we're probably the smallest in terms of our budget, but it sure goes a long way. We fund both talent development. We have a talent development program where we fund guilds, we fund individuals who, writers and directors. And they basically, people apply for the funding, and those are grants. Those are direct grants. And then for developing scripted and documentary, we have a process of application where we fund development, and then we fund, there's a limit, and people have to apply for that, and it's very contestable, as you can imagine. And then we also fund film production. And the biggest single fund is the Hei Pounamu Te Reo Māori Fund, which I get to decide with others, externals, and that's 2.5 million New Zealand dollars. Generally speaking, that's only most films, their budgets are a lot more than that. So we require our producers to find the rest of the money. They either find it, they have get money from the distributors, they have sales agents, they have private investment, and that fund is not a grant. That's actually equity. So, and the development the money we put into development in terms of scripted and documentary, that is also included in the final budget for the final film. So, and in terms of recoupment, the Film Commission expects to recoup, of course, on the waterfall of recoupment. I'm not a financial person, so don't ask me how that works, but basically there's an order of who gets paid out what if your film makes money. And many of our films do make money. We've had some very commercially successful films, but they're not made for very much. Our budgets are low. The average budget for a film in New Zealand is probably around 3.5-4 million New Zealand dollars. And what was I going to say? Yeah, so it's not an easy life being a film producer, but if you can, I think if you can, and documentary I think is probably financially quite a good investment if your documentary sells, because there's so many platforms and streamers that want documentary content. Yeah.
The other thing that the Film Commission does is the Screen Production Grant, which is an offset, like a tax rebate effectively. And like TVNZ, we benefit from about $30 million worth of content through the Screen Production Grant. So you can get between 20 and 40% offset of the full production if you meet all the criteria, and that's a really important part of our entire ecosystem as well.
Is that the same as our producer offset?
It's similar. Yeah, it's similar. You basically have to, it's quite a high threshold for documentary. I think it's like it has to be a multi-million-dollar documentary budget, which really limits it to the big players or big international producers. And then for TV series and feature, I think it's like you have to have 15 million as the minimum in terms of the spend. So yeah, they're big shows. They don't tend. But I know you asked about the independent, the smaller producers, and we always, anyone can come into us in terms of just our money. Anyone can come. Well, our money. It's everybody's money. They can come in and apply. Yeah.
Ok, parfait. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans la salle? Parce qu'il nous reste quelques minutes.
Just a question for Monsieur over
Luc.
here.
Comme Luc.
Sorry. Pardon. You said that you're getting more content. You're getting more content from local, from Tahiti. How much of that content is our indigenous driven content, or is it non-indigenous producers making that content?
Vous parlez de documentaire.
Any content that you see
Content.
that was coming through, yeah.
Ok, let's begin. Commençons par les documentaires. Nous, ici en Polynésie, on fait une dizaine de documentaires. Donc là, c'est sûr, c'est fabriqué localement, même s'il peut y avoir des sociétés de production parisiennes qui viennent nous aider au tournage. Donc voilà pour les documentaires. Pour les contenus de programmes plus importants qui nourrissent l'ensemble de nos grilles, ce sont des programmes qui, eux, sont achetés depuis Paris, mais ils peuvent s'acheter au gré de festivals ou de déplacements, et surtout ils peuvent même être achetés par les stations concernées. Mais pour le moment, le volume n'est pas encore suffisant à mon goût. Mais c'est une doctrine politique de se dire on va rendre la chaîne locale. On peut, là pour le moment, les chaînes, elles sont service public, elles essayent de gagner tous les publics, et il y a des programmes qui viennent indifféremment de France, des États-Unis, mais également sur les marchés locaux. Cette tendance d'aller s'approvisionner sur les marchés locaux, elle a quelques années déjà, mais elle se met en place petit à petit parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'obstacles. Le coût, la traduction simultanée, etc., la performance, le fait qu'il faille que ça intéresse tout le monde. Donc voilà, c'est une politique ambitieuse qui se met en place, mais les acteurs locaux, ici, ont les cartes en main pour pouvoir développer cette offre particulière. Là, je parle en télévision. Sur Internet, les échanges de contenu, là, pour le moment, c'est pas du tout organisé pour pouvoir glaner de l'audience chez les partenaires. C'est organisé pour que, dès qu'on ait un bon programme, on le met en lumière et on le montre et on essaye de le partager, mais on s'alimente plus au coup par coup que par un assemblement religieux. Mais là, Jean-Philippe, il me montre... Ah oui, je sais pas. Bon, est-ce que j'ai répondu à la question suffisamment? C'est surtout ça.
That's fine. Thank you.
D'autres questions?
Je suis avec le micro, donc si vous avez une question, je viens vers vous.
Alors, oui, je veux juste préciser ça, c'est qu'il me donne une information qui est importante pour vous. Là, nous fabriquons 3 heures de programmes locaux par jour, sur 5 jours par semaine. Pour vous donner une idée, hein. Sur 24 heures, donc. Mais c'est énorme, déjà.
Merci, Luc.
Bah, s'il n'y a pas de questions, je vous laisse le mot de la fin, Pascal, du coup.
Alors, le mot de la fin, il est pour nos participants. Nevak?
I just had one other thing just to mention is to ensure that if you are doing third-party clearances, so that's one of the things that I think trips up a lot of producers, experienced or relatively green ones, is just ensuring that if you've got music or archival or sports rights or whatever it might be, just ensuring that third-party rights, that you're trying to clear that for all of the various platforms and all of the various territories, because we find that that's something that trips people up a lot.
I was just going to add, I think for us, this collaboration is so exciting for producers, especially in the documentary world. It is opening doors. We have a very small budget compared to any other broadcaster in the country. We do think, we are unlike any other linear broadcasters, we are very flexible with durations, which most of them are not. You have specific slots. So, you know, we still run initiatives in order to support but also grow our Indigenous production sector. So one of those initiatives is Our Stories Our Way, which is short documentaries. And it's fantastic in growing producers, but also allowing our more established Indigenous producers to just kind of keep food on the table. If they're in between big projects, they can get these little ones up. Collaboration with big streamers. What's interesting for me is what they select and what they find interesting, because I don't know. You know, my concern is worrying about our audience. So, for instance, one of our biggest successes in terms of that collaboration came from, and like I said, we do quite a few of these short docs per year on everything. Some are biographical, some of them on climate. The one that they picked up, which they were super interested in from day dot, was a short doc, half-hour doc called Our Law, which was about Indigenous police officers in remote areas and the difficulties that they have working within institutionalised racism, essentially, then working with the community and the backlash they get from their own community because they are working as police, and they loved it. And if you had asked me what they would pick, what they would have loved, I would have never guessed that one. So they ended up acquiring that short doc for us. And this was at the very beginning of where we didn't share content. We didn't do that. It was about exclusivity. They got that, and then they were so interested and they loved it so much. And I'm assuming that it performed well for them because, as you know, they're not transparent with their audience data. They have now gone in collaboration for a full series, a documentary series on Our Law, which is about to premiere for us soon. And that is, not only is it an Indigenous producer, the executive producer and production company is also an Indigenous production company. So, you know, that's a game changer for us and such an opportunity for us, but definitely for the production houses and the producers. Really exciting.
Donc, beau message d'espoir pour les prochaines années entre les acteurs traditionnels et les plateformes. Je vous remercie et je vous souhaite à toutes et à tous une bonne continuation.
Applaudissements s'il vous plaît. Merci pour cette intervention à tous nos invités sur le PP.